Today, we're going to get into a really radical new way of thinking about the self. And it all kicks off with this super common, kind of uncomfortable feeling. You know that little cringe you get when you hear a recording of your own voice?
So, what is that? Is it just, vanity? Well, the theory we're exploring today says no. It's actually a clue, a breadcrumb that points to this profound mismatch between who we feel we are on the inside and how the world actually sees us from the outside.
All right, to really get our heads around this, we're going to follow a pretty fascinating path. We'll start with something called the mirror problem, then dive into this really powerful idea called dimensional collapse. From there, we'll see how personality is a shadow, look at why systems flatten us, and then finally, we'll land on a more humane question that we can all start asking ourselves.
Okay, so first up, the mirror problem. That weird, uncomfortable feeling we were just talking about? Well, it turns out it actually reveals two completely different ways that people model who they are. So, on one side, you have what's called the surface-anchored model. For these folks, their identity is really built from the outside in, their appearance, their voice, what other people say about them. So a mirror or a recording, it just confirms what they already feel. But then, there are people whose identity is high-dimensional internal. Their sense of self is built from these incredible layers of complex thoughts, feelings, and stories inside their own head. For them, looking in a mirror or hearing their voice feels just incomplete. It's like a blurry, low-resolution picture of something infinitely more detailed.
Right, so this feeling of mismatch, of seeing this flattened-out version of yourself, it actually has a name. It's called dimensional collapse.
Dimensional collapse is basically the process of taking that rich, high-dimensional internal self and squishing it into a simple, static, external thing. You can think of it like lossy compression for your soul. You're taking this massive, complex file, your entire inner world, and you're shrinking it way down, and you lose a ton of crucial data in the process.
So when you see that photo or you hear your voice on a recording, the feeling isn't, hey, that's not me. It's something way more subtle. It's more like this. That's a very incomplete shadow of me. You recognize it, sure, but you are painfully aware of just how much is missing.
And what exactly gets lost in that collapse? Oh, just about everything that makes you, you. All the internal nuance, the subtle shades of your emotions, the real intent behind your words, even the scaffolding that holds your thoughts together and your sense of self across time. It all just gets stripped away.
And this is where the idea just explodes in scale, because this concept of collapse, it doesn't just apply to mirrors and photos. It completely forces a massive paradigm shift in how we think about the very idea of personality itself.
See, it's not just mirrors and recordings that are flattening us out. Personality tests, social media profiles, job interviews, all of them are, in their own way, forms of dimensional collapse.
This just reframes everything, doesn't it? Think about it this way. A test like the Myers-Briggs might not be measuring who you actually are in all your glorious complexity. Instead, what if it's just measuring which simplified slice of you tends to show up when you're forced to project yourself into a few limited boxes?
And this leads us to a whole new definition. Maybe personality isn't some stable, internal thing we carry around. Maybe it's a projection artifact. It's the behavior that shows up after your complex self has been collapsed by an observer, or a situation, or a test. It's the shadow you cast, and the shape of that shadow is determined by the light of whatever environment you happen to be in.
Okay, so what are the real-world consequences of living in a world that's constantly creating these projection artifacts of us? This is where the theory gets super practical, especially when we start talking about big institutions like our jobs and our schools. Let's just start with a blunt truth. A lot of institutions only work because they flatten people. They succeed by reducing our complexity, by ignoring our rich internal worlds, because honestly, it's just more efficient for the system that way. And how did they do that? Well, they succeed when we accept their external definitions of us, when our complexity gets boiled down to a few bullet points, when compliance is more important than real understanding, and when our performance is just measured under constant surveillance. This is exactly why those environments can feel so incredibly draining. So, when you take a person with that rich, high-dimensional inner life and you put them into one of these flattening systems, you create this incredibly painful conflict, and the term for this is structural mismatch. It's not just that you're stressed out. It can feel like the system is actively trying to erase the real you. So if that's the problem, what on earth is the solution? Well, it starts by changing the fundamental question we ask, both about ourselves and about everybody else. And right here, this is the entire shift.
The old question we always ask is, what kind of person is this? Which is all about slapping a label on someone. But the new, much more humane question is, what kind of collapse does this environment induce in this person? See how that moves us from judgment to context, from blame to actual understanding?
This gives us a really practical two-step tool for our own lives. So, step 1, stop asking what's wrong with me whenever you're struggling. And step 2, start asking, is this environment collapsing me too aggressively? This simple switch reframes so many personal struggles. They become problems with the environment, not problems with you.
So ultimately, the big takeaway here is this. The goal isn't to find the right personality label that finally explains everything about you. The goal is to find the environments, the jobs, the relationships, the communities that don't force you into a destructive collapse in the first place.
It's really about reaching that point where you can finally stop forcing yourself into someone else's frame. And that's not just a feeling of relief. That is freedom.
So we'll leave you with this question to really think about. It's not who are you, but something much more powerful. What environments preserve your coherence? What places, what people, and what situations allow the richest, most complete version of you to actually exist? The answer to that, well, that might just change everything.